And what does it feel like to work with Peter Thiel, also like Reid Hoffman and Elon Musk in PayPal?
Well, I mean, they're just such incredible creators. They're thinking about things in very interesting ways. I feel like it's one of the things that made me later in my career quite a successful venture capitalist, because I would meet entrepreneurs and I would compare them to Peter and Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman, this group of people who have kind of become legendary. But that's the people I was comparing an entrepreneur to say, should I invest in this person? Should I invest in this idea?
大家好，欢迎来到数位时代，我是总编辑王志仁。我们跟大家介绍过非常多的科技业的故事以及重要的人物。那通常我们都是跟大家分享成功的故事。那今天当然这个故事也很成功，也很特别，但是它也有成功以外的另外一面。那也是一个非常难得的一个经验。那我们邀请到的是这一本书的作者叫《走出慾望矽谷》。那这是一个很难得的一个人生的体验。那我们也很高兴能够邀请到作者第一人称现身到我们的 Podcast YouTube 节目来。So I'd like to introduce our guest today, also the author of this book, Silicon Valley Porn Star, Jason Portnoy. Jason, hi, great to have you here.
Thank you. It's very, very happy to be here.
So I just briefly introduce that we usually introduce to the audience about the success stories. Okay, so today it's a quite unusual experience to invite you here, the author. And so could you tell the audience first about how did you come up with the idea to write this book and what this book basically is about?
Okay. So I had the idea to write this book because I went through I thought was a very interesting experience, and I'll share more about what the experience was. But after I went through it, people who knew me asked me to start sharing that experience with other people, and every time I shared it, it was really impactful. I shared it with people, and they would start crying sometimes, and they were like, people kept saying, you need to write this down. You need to write this down and share it. And so the journey that I went on that turned out to be quite interesting was I was just a humble kid from New Jersey in the East Coast of the United States. I went to university in Colorado, then I went to graduate school at Stanford during the first .com boom. And so it was late 1999. And I very kind of luckily wound up working at this company that turned into PayPal. And so I was kind of somewhat lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and had this incredible learning experience with PayPal. Within 3 years, we went public and then got acquired by eBay. At the time, it was a very big outcome. And then kind of made a lot of money at a very young age, and I feel like I didn't have good role models. And although I shouldn't blame what I did on that, but I kind of started dabbling with. First, it was pornography. Then I was starting to hook up with people that I was meeting online, and then I was having affairs, and all of this was happening while I was dating a woman who then we were engaged, and then she became my wife. And so I was kind of living this double life, and many years later realized I had a serious problem that I couldn't stop, and that I had an addiction, really. And so that was around 2015 where I finally kind of got caught and realized I had to change. And then I climbed out of that dark place that I had wound up in. And the story kind of ends on a high note. And so that was the story that when I shared it with, especially, I was working in Silicon Valley, then I was investing in startups, and mostly working with young men. And I was sharing the story with them as kind of a cautionary tale of what not to do. And it was very impactful. So I decided to write it down.
Okay, so that's basically about this book, right? So also a memoir of redemption and rediscovering the self.
Yes, that's
is
right.
About.
That's right.
So usually when we read the books about Silicon Valley, it's about mostly high tech or new product, service, entrepreneurs, startups, or venture capital.
Yeah.
There's all the key words about those things, but in this book you don't find them. It's more about yourself, how you deal with all those kind of I would say trouble or problem and conquer them.
And I feel like it's, a lot of people in the world of entrepreneurship and in Silicon Valley at that time and probably still, they have big ambitions, right? They're very ambitious, very driven, very motivated, and want to succeed, build companies that are important, maybe make some money for themselves along the way. And this is a little bit of a story of like, what happens when those things actually do happen? And when you're, a young person with maybe not a solid foundation, if those responsibilities or wealth are kind of thrust upon you, how do you handle that? And I feel like there's very few places to go to find guidance from mentors or adults or elders or whatever you want to call them in society to say, hey, I've experienced this success that's beyond my wildest dreams. I had no idea that this was going to happen. Now what do I do? And I feel like maybe this book helps speak to that a little bit.
Okay. And you went to the graduate school of Stanford.
Yeah.
And when you graduated from Stanford, what was your dream or role model back then?
Good question. Well, I dropped out of Stanford when I went to work at PayPal. And so by the time I went back to finish my degree, it was 4 or 5 years later. And so by the time I was finishing my degree, I was just trying to finish. I didn't have specific role models. But by then I had worked at PayPal for those 3 years. And then after PayPal, one of the PayPal founders, Peter Thiel, had a hedge fund. And I went with 4 or 5 other folks to work at that hedge fund. And that's the job I had when I was finishing my degree at Stanford. So I thought I was going to go build this giant hedge fund with Peter Thiel, and I was going to be in that world.
Okay. So after all, you went back and finished. Like Bill Gates never finished.
Yeah,
I know.
I did go back and finish. It felt like unfinished business that I really, and I was very proud when I finished. Yeah.
And what does it feel like to work with Peter Thiel, also like Reid Hoffman and Elon Musk in PayPal?
Well, I mean, they're just such incredible creators. They're thinking about things in very interesting ways. They're always very curious, always learning, always cross-pollinating different ideas between companies. So they're often working on multiple things at one time. And I feel like I got to learn a lot of that by working with them and around them. And I feel like it's one of the things that made me later in my career quite a successful venture capitalist, because I would meet entrepreneurs and I would compare them to Peter and Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman and David Sachs and Roelof Botha and Max Levchin. I mean, this group of people who have kind of become legendary. But that's the people I was comparing an entrepreneur to say, should I invest in this person? Should I invest in this idea? And I feel very lucky that they kind of created my model for what I was looking for, because it helped me as an investor.
And also you make quite a fortune working with PayPal, right?
I don't know if it was a fortune, but yeah, certainly more money in my late 20s than I ever thought I would make in my life. So yeah.
And what did you do with those money?
Well, it was very disorienting. I mean, I went out and I bought a Ferrari because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. I bought a nice house, and you know, I kind of, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of started going down this dark path in this vice. Where, you know, my drug of choice happened to be pornography and women, and you know, I definitely spent some money there. But then, fortunately, was able to recover from those things, and I feel like now trying to use whatever monies I've accumulated for good purposes, like self-publishing this book and promoting it, and trying to be in service to the world.
Okay,
yeah.
And you achieved quite big success at a very young age, and certainly there will be pressure associated with that. So how did you deal with that when, you know, this big pressure kept coming when you achieved that big success?
Yeah, I feel like I didn't handle it well, and that's kind of what I talk about in the story of the book, where I was trying so hard to stay on top of everything, but I was just running so fast and really learning on the job in a lot of ways. And I didn't have a solid foundation. So I mentioned that earlier as well, and the title of the book, the subtitle, A Memoir of Redemption and Rediscovering the Self, I feel like I still didn't know who I was. And part of the journey that I went on later in this redemption phase and rediscovering myself was to stop focusing on all of these outward signs of what I considered success at the time. Money, cars, women, status, titles at my company or wherever I was working. Those were all of the ways that I was judging myself or claiming success, but it turns out inside I wasn't healthy. And so once I reframed for myself, what does it mean to be successful? It's not the money, it's not the cars, it's not women, it's not all of these external things. It's what's happening inside of myself. And that's when I really started to focus on understanding myself and learning about myself and getting to know myself. And as I grew in that knowledge, I grew in, maybe I felt safer, maybe I was more secure, maybe I was more confident, and then I didn't need the attention that I might get from driving around in a fancy car, or I didn't need validation from a woman to make myself feel good about myself. I was getting that from inside myself.
And that kind of need for attention has a lot to do with your childhood, right? Because you mentioned in the book that your parents get divorced and you were forced to live with these two families because they each got remarried later. Yeah. So kind of suffer from a not so happy childhood. Yeah, that's right. Has a deep impact on your future life.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I feel like these stories of difficult childhoods are so common. It's very interesting because none of us really like to talk about it, but ironically, we probably have it more in common than not in common. Right. You know, it's almost like backwards. It's like the thing we all share, but none of us want to talk about because we're embarrassed.
Because it was a kind of like dark side.
Yeah, yeah, we're just embarrassed because when, or we feel like we did something wrong, or we feel like our situation was unique. But in my case, my parents got divorced when I was young. My father moved far away. And I think I was still young enough, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, where to me, that was a very traumatic event. You know, my father kind of disappeared. And I didn't see him much after that until much later, maybe like high school. And then my mother, when I was in about 6th grade, started to have depression. And at least that's the first that I really remember her having depression. She probably had it before that. And she kind of, in a way, disappeared on me. She was maybe physically present, but she wasn't really emotionally.
Because she suffered like depression too, right?
She was suffering with depression, and so she was maybe physically present, but maybe not really emotionally present, which as a, sixth grade young boy, I think we need that. All of us need that. Young boys, young girls, right? We need that presence from our parents. And then probably to cap it off, my mother had remarried and my stepfather had some significant issues with anger. And I was very afraid of him. And so I was living in this household. It was kind of dark. I was scared. It was just not an environment where a child develops a healthy sense of self, right? Not an environment where a child is able to really have like a healthy psyche development, I feel. And so if you send a person like that out into the world and they have all these ambitions, maybe they're ambitious because they just want to do good things, but maybe they're ambitious because they have to prove something to the world, because they have to prove something to themselves, because they have to prove that they're good enough or something like that. And then you have this, and then you throw a bunch of money on top of that, and I feel like that's just a recipe. It's like a bad, just a bad.
Oh,
recipe.
Those miserable experiences, right?
A little bit, yeah. And again, I feel like I am sensitive and sympathetic that so many of us have these difficult experiences or traumatic experiences at childhood that affect us, and it's difficult to repair those things. Especially if you don't even really understand that they're there. And I know for myself, I didn't really understand how all of those things affected me until my life started falling apart. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. I thought I was doing everything right. I went to a great school, I got a good job, I made a bunch of money, I bought a fancy car. Like I thought
you want to be recognized, that you want the kind of people envy you, something like that, to achieve something.
I thought I was doing all the right things. This is what society, through television, movies, magazines, had told me was the mark of a successful man. So I thought, I'm a successful man. I didn't understand that those things weren't really making me happy at a very deep level. They were just on the surface.
Okay. And in this book, you also mentioned that in your childhood, in high school, I remember you sold something to your classmate, and later on were considered a drug dealer and got expelled from school, right?
Yeah, sure. I was an entrepreneur very early on.
That's also part of this miserable experience, right? Because your mom had to go to school, explain to...
Yes, but oddly, that turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life in a very strange way, because it was my way of crying out for help. I didn't have the vocabulary to do that, but it was my way of crying out for help. And all of a sudden, my mom kind of came out of her depression and was there helping me. I mean, she was taking me to my job so I could make money to pay my legal bills, and taking me to the lawyer's office and to court. So it's not quite the attention you really should want to be getting when you're in high school. But in a very strange way, it was like my way of calling for help and getting some of that attention maybe that I was craving. And then it also kind of set me straight for a little while. It scared me. And I was like, well, okay, there are some guardrails here that I don't want to go past. So maybe it was a good thing. I actually feel like, as I shared very early, I was engaging in a lot of other bad behavior as an adult. And in 2015, I got caught, and that experience at the time was devastating. But looking back, it's been 9 years now. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it forced me to stop and wake up and look at myself and say, this isn't right, And so in a weird way, sometimes these things that at the moment can feel like very devastating, they can be really valuable wake-up calls that can shake us to pay attention.
And for this kind of story, I mean, it's usually simplified in the business world that what didn't kill you just make you stronger.
Sure.
But maybe we can now just simplify it in that way because you have gone through a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. I mean, maybe looking back many decades from now, it will feel like we could condense it into that way. But certainly, you know, we haven't really talked about what this has meant for my relationship with my wife, because that woman that I was cheating on, you know, a decade ago, and we went through this whole journey together, we're still together. And after we went through this dark place, we kind of joke about it now that we're in marriage 2.0. Maybe it's feels like a very techie way to talk about marriage, but and actually very recently, in the fall of 2023, we went through some things, nothing related to the past, a totally new set of challenges. We're raising 2 kids now, like there's all kinds of stuff. But our joke is that now we're in marriage 3.0. As of like January of 2024. And so this has also been an interesting thing and realization and journey, is that I'm moving through this life experience with this woman who's my life partner, my soulmate, and we're learning really valuable lessons from each other. And we keep changing. And that's an important part of my story and my book, is this idea that like we should keep changing, we should keep evolving. And so as I'm evolving and she's evolving, we're new people. And so every once in a while, it's kind of like a tectonic, you just had an earthquake here. So it's kind of like tectonic plates are pushing, and sometimes there's a break, but then you come back together and you call it, in our case, marriage 3.0. So same people on the outside, but much different people on the inside.
There's an old saying that the key to successful marriage is to marry many times, always with the same person.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Pretty much in your case, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I've never heard that.
Because you very bluntly share the experience that because you cheated on her, leads to her having an affair.
Yes.
That's a very blunt.
Yes.
Yeah. So how back then did you realize you're hurting some people, especially people close to you, that you know there's something that you definitely need to change to improve that?
Not really. No, I had, for whatever reason, a deep sense of entitlement that I'm a successful man, and a successful man goes and gets what he wants, and this is what I want, and I'm entitled to it, and I'm going to go get it. And I was not, and I thought, I'm not hurting anyone because they don't know. And I thought that I could keep all of these things separate. I thought I could live 2 parallel lives. And I learned the hard way that that's just not possible. Maybe you can do it for a short amount of time, but it's, you're definitely, people know. So she knew that something wasn't right, but she couldn't quite pinpoint what it was or use words to describe what it was, but she knew, her body knew, her soul knew, you might say. And so, yeah, eventually that's going to catch up to you. Yeah.
Okay. So can we summarize that your story that is basically a kid suffered from poor childhood, that grew up to have strong ambition to succeed, to get people's attention and recognition by joining a startup to make money. So basically it goes like that.
Yes, my goal wasn't to join a startup, because at the time I was back in the kind of web 1.0, where startups were really a new thing. So it wasn't something that I aspired to when I was younger, because it was a brand new thing. So I didn't know, I certainly was ambitious and had aspirations, but not for startups specifically, but it turned out that the startup was the place to get all of those things I was looking for, the titles and the responsibility and the money and the prestige. So yeah, it worked out that way.
Okay. And so because back then Stanford grads like Jerry Yang, David Filo, they founded Yahoo, and later like Larry Page and Sergey Brin for Google. So there are quite a few examples like this.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was an incredibly productive period in Silicon Valley. There was just so much, you know, because all of these things exist in these ecosystems, and you had this ecosystem of with the universities doing cutting-edge research, and then you had capital in the area from Intel and Apple Computer and like the earlier versions of the success, Hewlett-Packard, the earlier computer companies, had generated a lot of kind of wealth in that area. So you had wealthy, experienced executives who could then maybe invest money into these young ideas and mentor those founders and help cultivate those ideas. And then you wind up with Sand Hill Road and all the venture capital stuff that now we read about. But yes, it was very interesting. And then as the ecosystem matured, you had employees. Myself would be a good example. My first job after college was at a startup company. So then when I went to my next job, I knew how to build a startup, because that's really all I knew how to do, actually. I didn't know how to run a big company, but I know how to build a startup. And so once you kickstart that ecosystem, you have all this recycling of the talent. And then, of course, you have the lawyers who know how to deal with things, and the accountants who know how to do everything. And so it's an interesting thing that happened there.
Yeah. And there's a theory that for these successful entrepreneurs, there must be something that, either like you had some trauma from childhood. So, for example, like Andy Grove, he came to the States from Hungary. He had faced the kind of threat from, during the Second World War from the Nazi Germans, and then by the Soviet Union. So when he went to America, he basically had some kind of extraordinary experience in life already. And also for like Elon Musk, his childhood is miserable, like yours too. Got abused by his father, right? So, and for Steve Jobs as well, that when he first realized that he was adopted, he felt abandoned. Yeah. So, but they all turn out to be successful entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So, what do you think about that theory?
Well, I think that this is talked about in the world of shame. That there are shaming experiences that a human may have when they're very young, and that one of the effects of a shaming experience is to feel like uncomfortable. So I'm a little out of my depth here, so I want to be careful, but is to feel uncomfortable, being imperfect, maybe. And so a person who's feeling like that may go one of two directions. They may try to be kind of superhuman and perfect, and but in our society we see that as someone who's like very ambitious and driven, but behind, like right underneath that, there's also the dark side of that, which is nothing is ever good enough, right? It's always has to keep growing, bigger, bigger, bigger. And going back, that shaming experience can also push someone in the other direction, where they kind of fall out the bottom of society, and they don't have ambition to achieve, or they don't want to be part of society in that other way. And so it is a very interesting thing. I feel like I've also heard these stories in sports, where you have, I think Michael Phelps has talked about this. I think Andre Agassi struggled with his success. I know that's a while ago, but I think there are other examples where significantly successful sports figures have come out much later and said, at some point I realized that my drive for perfection and everything had to be better, nothing's ever good enough, may have actually been coming from a kind of a negative place. And I think that's really interesting, because my aspiration now is to be a healthier individual. And I have wondered, well, if I aspire to be kind of emotionally healthier, is that going to kill my drive? Is that going to destroy that ambition, or destroy the way I want to create, or what I want to create? And there is some of that, I will be honest, where as I feel kind of healthier and more comfortable with kind of who I am and where I am, there's less motivation to, there's just less motivation for more. Like I'm much more content with what I have, and so I don't feel like I need more, and I don't feel like I have to prove myself. But on the other hand, there's a joy now in creating from that other place where I feel like I'm creating to be in service to others. And I think that that can be an interesting shift for people. I don't think it has to be the case that you have to have a bad childhood to be an ambitious creator. I don't think that's the case. I think it can work for lots of different people.
But I mean, change, it will be like more balanced.
Yeah.
Not just simply one dimensional to like make more money or, you know, to make the company bigger, something like. But there's still people like Elon Musk, you know, when he achieves something, he wants more.
Yeah.
So he can see from Tesla to SpaceLink to Starlink to so SpaceX. So it's like never enough.
It's never enough. I mean, I read the biography that was written about Elon recently, and it was a fascinating story.
By Walter Isaacson?
Yeah. It was a wonderfully well written. It was just a fascinating story. I couldn't put it down. I was listening to it as an audiobook, and I just couldn't stop listening. And it was amazing. And I have a lot of appreciation for Elon. I worked for him pretty closely at one point in my career, very early, and he was always a great guy. And I appreciate what he's done. I understand he's kind of become a polarizing figure, and I understand he's not perfect, but none of us are perfect. I'm not sure we should expect him to be perfect. I don't think it's fair to expect him to be perfect. I think that we should acknowledge the pretty incredible things that he has done. But as far as what should he do next, or should he stop because he's now created so much, or does it always have to be bigger and better? I think that's really a question for him, you know. Is he happy? Is he doing what he loves? Is he when he wakes up in the morning, is he excited to tackle those challenges? And I think only he can answer those questions, you know.
And get back to your story. So in your 20s, that your aspiration or strong drive for success is to make money, buy the Ferrari, a fancy house maybe. So, and associated with that, you suffer from, you know, pressure and depression too. So how did you come out from that depression?
I mean, I didn't. And I don't know that I had a depression, but I was definitely
or feeling lost.
I was feeling lost. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling, and so what I did is I numbed myself with a drug, and as I said earlier, my drug of choice was pornography and women, and so I could get lost in the distraction of pornography or the distraction of a hookup as a way to avoid feeling my feelings, as a way to avoid feeling overwhelmed or inadequate or like I was failing, or the shame and embarrassment and guilt of lying to my girlfriend, who was then my fiance, who was then my wife. So this is why I think this is one of the reasons why people get into these cycles that we call an addiction, because we'll go into some drug, alcohol, there's so many, you know, gambling, drugs, whatever, and we'll do that as a way of distracting ourselves and numbing our feelings. But then after we're done, we feel guilty and ashamed, and those negative feelings are still there, but now they're worse. And so what do? We have to go back to the drug, whatever the drug is, and we need more of it. And this is what we call in our society an addiction. This is like the definition. Yeah, and so I didn't come out of it. I went deeper into my addiction until eventually, many years later, I got caught.
Okay. And then there was this life coach, Melissa.
That's right.
So who kind of help you go through all this.
Yeah.
So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So I met her in around 2010. I was kind of struggling. My relationship with my wife, we were struggling. And I was still doing this bad behavior, but I wasn't admitting it. And I started working with her, and it took many, many years of her really, it's hard to summarize what she did for me, but really she kind of loved me in a way that was very non-judgmental and said, whatever's happening in your life, you're creating this, maybe for some reason, there's something you're getting out of this. Let's figure out why. I'm not going to make you feel like a bad person. And so because of that, I was just willing to share with her more and more and more. And after many years, I finally shared everything that was going on. And then we were finally able to heal those wounds from my childhood, or go back and discover them and realize that they were there. So she was, I mean, she saved my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jason, when I read this book, I mean, I need to be honest that I really appreciate it. I said, whoa, this guy is brutally honest with this. But, you know, on the other hand, that, you know, with all the success story we read on the surface, I mean, deep down inside, pretty much a screw-up life. So is this kind of cost that people need to take in order to succeed in Silicon Valley, according to the friends you know in that, I mean, in the Bay Area?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
So you are an exception case, not the common ones.
Yeah, I don't know actually, because no one else is writing their memoir to
so
tell us.
People don't talk about that. When
people don't talk about it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I think that's part of the point of sharing the story is that what you see out there, you need to scratch below the surface. You can't just assume it's all good. And when I talk about this, especially for young men and women as a cautionary tale, that's part of what I mean. It's not that I'm necessarily worried that they're going to get addicted to porn. Maybe they will, and I hope that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, maybe this is a roadmap that could help them out. But I think maybe more importantly is this idea that if you feel like society is telling you this is what you need to do to be successful, or this is what you need to have to be considered successful, you should question that. Don't just assume it's true. Because for me, it wasn't true. And nobody told me it wasn't true. I think if someone had told me it wasn't true, I'm not sure I would have believed them. And I think, you know, if you have kids, I have kids, I try to teach them, tell them things all the time. They don't want to hear it, you know? They want to make their own mistakes. And so I understand that there's that element too, but I at least want to put this out there for them. I think the people that the book has resonated with the most are people who have already found themselves struggling in an addiction of any sort, really, or in a marriage or other relationship that has struggled with infidelity or pornography or something like that, because the story is about me and my wife going through that, and so I think it's also been really helpful for them. Yeah.
Okay, so so you didn't talk or discuss this with your friends or pals in the Bay Area.
No.
So usually people just focus more on the work.
That's right. Yeah, I just kept it a secret. And one thing that was interesting, right before my book came out, I got very scared that people that I worked with were going to be mad at me, or were going to kind of disown me or distance themselves from me because I was sharing these pretty scandalous things. And so I went on LinkedIn and I unconnected myself one at a time, because you can't do it. I think I did 50 a night for 10 nights or something like that. Same with Facebook. I removed all of my old posts, everything from every social media channel, because I just got afraid that people were going to be really judging me and angry with me or something like that. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. We had a PayPal reunion party in 2022, I think it was, at Peter Thiel's house, and everyone was there. It was really amazing. Reid wasn't there, which I was sad about, but Peter was there, and Max and Elon and everyone pretty much. And the response I got from everyone, the book had just come out like a few months prior, and I didn't know it, but a lot of people had read it. And they were all congratulating me. And the sentiment was like, wow, that was really brave, and I think it's really cool that you did that. And it made me feel really good about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And consider this to be like a movie or maybe Netflix.
I wish somebody would turn it into a film. Yes, I would love that. I'm not pushing on that very hard, but I think it would be a great story. Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, this is your first trip to Taiwan. Although you haven't have much time to see everything,
No.
But what would be the advice for the readers or audience here who watch this interview or have the opportunity to read this book? So what would be the advice for them?
Tell me more, give me like an age range, because I feel like my advice, and like in the entrepreneurship community.
Yeah, we operate the largest entrepreneur community here in Taiwan. We had a social community called Meet Taipei here, which annually we host a very big exhibition. Which invite like 400 to 500 startup teams to have booths. Also have speeches, panel discussions here in Taiwan.
Okay. Well, so my advice then is, I feel like in the business world, we have this tendency to think about our lives as like, this is my work life and this is my personal life. And what I learned, and one of the things I learned in my journey, was that there is no separation between those two things, and that there weren't two Jasons. I thought there was, but there really wasn't. And also, as I went on this journey of getting to know myself, healing any of the wounds that I had inside, working with a life coach. I think people can also work with a therapist or a mentor, whoever. But as I did those things and I became what I consider to be more like emotionally healthy, I became a better investor. I think I became a better boss to my subordinates. I think I became a better board member. I became a better mentor to CEOs that I was working with. I feel like as I did more work on myself and got to places where I didn't need things from the outside world, I didn't need the recognition, I didn't need the attention, I didn't need the validation, then when I was interacting with people, I didn't have as much of an agenda because I didn't need anything from them. So I could just be myself and I could be present with them in whatever it was that they were going through. And that just made me more empathetic and more helpful. And so I think the point I want to make here is that my journey involves me doing a lot of personal growth and development work and healing my soul and trying to become a better human. But those things translated into me being more effective in my business work as well. And I think that's a surprise to a lot of people. They feel like one is not related to the other. And I think they're very closely related.
It's like a self-made, totally new Jason.
Jason 2.0.
Jason 2.0. So what would the Jason 3.0 be like?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. I think Jason 2.0 has really been focused on being in service, has really been focused on sharing the story about porn addiction and sex addiction and the relationship impacts and climbing out of that. this book, the storyline of the book ends in 2015. In 2016, I had a son, and in 2018, I started to realize that below the surface of this story of the sex and the porn and the money and the cars and all of those flashy things is really fundamentally a story about this boy who looks like a man on the outside in his 30s, but inside is still very much a boy, and he has to start growing up. And then once I had a son, this also came out, realizing I have to understand what it means to be an adult man in society. And so one of the things that's what I've been much more focused on now is, and maybe that's Jason 3.0, is how can I be a more mature adult in society? How can I be a mature masculine role model for my son and daughter? And I do feel like in our society, I wish that we had more mature adult role models, both masculine and feminine. And I would aspire to be one someday, I hope.
Okay.
That feels like a weird thing to say, but I don't know what else we're supposed to do.
How could that lesson be shared or learned for those, especially 20-something, who start up their company and try hard to, be successful? Because now it's the AI, it's a new type of tech revolution again. So it's expected to be some new, unicorns. So some companies that gonna hit the jackpot and make big wins.
Yeah.
But these entrepreneurs may still very young, like when you were with PayPal.
Yeah.
But they need to deal with a lot of pressure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think that my advice would be one of the fundamental things that I learned was that my primary responsibility in this lifetime on Earth is to grow in maturity, to know myself deeply, to grow in maturity, to grow in consciousness, and to be in service. And this was, many years of figuring this out. And part of that also was a realization that whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's writing a book or investing as a venture capitalist or whatever, those things are kind of pastimes that I'm engaged in during my time here on planet Earth, but they don't define me, and they aren't the primary thing they're not my primary objective as a human on planet Earth. And so I would say something like that to some 20-somethings and say, yes, you may be starting a company, but that company isn't you. It doesn't define you. You are bigger than that company. And you're starting that company, I think subconsciously we start these things because we want to manifest a creation in the world that shows us who we are. So if you're a founding CEO, that company is going to be a reflection of you. And so if you focus on elevating your consciousness and expanding your consciousness, that's when your company can grow, and that's when your company can be more successful. I often say your company can't grow faster than you grow if you're the founding CEO. So I really encourage people to focus on this personal growth and development. Maybe because it has the word personal in it, that people would discount it and say, well, how is that going to help me build my business? But I'm very convinced that if you focus on this, it's going to help you build your business. I mean, partly because at the end of the day, building your business means working with other people. And if you can work with people in a way where you can be in service to them as opposed to always having an agenda on them, it's going to create a better culture in your company. I mean, there's so many things. We could go, I could keep going,
Okay. But you mentioned earlier about Andrew Agassi and also Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
So did you ever have a chance to meet with them?
No.
Suppose you do, what would you, discuss them regarding this redemption process that happened to you and to them as well?
I'd say, isn't that fascinating? Isn't it fascinating that when you were swimming and making medals and everyone loved you and all that, but for you it was never enough and never enough, isn't it fascinating that at the end of the day that was actually coming from a place where you weren't happy? And that is very fascinating to me. And just to talk to someone who's gone through that experience and had that realization, I think it would be interesting. I guess another thing, we didn't talk much about AI, but when I think about AI and the conversations around AI, I think it's great. I think it's going to introduce a lot of interesting things over the next decades for sure. And it can be a very good thing if used properly. But I also, again, want to encourage people, it's not like humans are static and the AI is going to catch up to us and surpass us at some point. I feel like that's kind of a defeatist look on things, as opposed to saying, we're not static, we are dynamic, and there's probably a lot of room for us to grow. There's probably a lot more that we could be doing as humans to be better humans. And so I think it's fine to continue developing the AI, but I don't think we have to sit and feel hopeless that it's going to pass us someday. I think we are in control. And I think we will be for a long time. Maybe that's too optimistic.
Yeah, so there's optimistic, like the boomsday, also the doomsday,
yeah, right,
the pessimistic
right.
as well.
Yeah.
So like the drug addict, the sex addict, there may be AI addict in the future.
Right. Sure. Yes, well that is one thing that concerns me when I look at, I feel like it's well documented that what is good for human flourishing is time in nature and community with other humans and animals and connection. And yet we have so many companies where their business model is advertising, and the only way that they make more money is if we stare at a glass screen for longer. And then they want to make devices that will put over our eyes for an augmented reality or virtual reality, where again it feels like it's pulling us out of the things that we know are good for our emotional well-being. And I worry about that. I hope, virtual reality hasn't really taken off, I don't think, in the way that maybe I thought it would. I played with virtual reality glasses many, many years ago, and I thought it would be everywhere by now. And maybe that's one of the reasons, is that maybe on some level, many of us realize this isn't necessarily good for me. Like, what's good for me is to be in nature. What's good for me is to be with other humans and other animals.
Okay. So thank you, Jason Portnoy 2.0.
I think I'm a 3.0 now.
3.0,
I might be
okay.
3.0,
Yeah, you evolved very fast. For sharing with bluntly with his early success and redemption experience during the interview. Also, in this book, I strongly recommend. It's a cautionary tale for entrepreneurs and people who have strong aspiration for success. To think again, it's not just one-dimensional. You need to think it more balanced way. So thank you, Jason.
3.0. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.